This is a video about Baldur's Gate 3 races.
No one asked you if you wanted to be a human. You never had the opportunity to be something else. But then, some guy invented RPGs. Who do you want to be? A cheeky gnome with a mischievous streak? A dashing half-elf that oozes charisma? Or a dark, alluring drow with a dangerous edge? But wait, what do these races actually do? What do all of these little icons actually mean? What if you pick the wrong race? Is your primal attraction to well-rounded fantasy races about to lead you into a trap? Oh no, not again. Fear not, gamer. Together, we'll unravel the mysteries of race choice. By the end of this video, you'll know everything you need to know about race choice. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Frankly, you'll know so much about races, it'll be fucking embarrassing. So, whether you're here to actually min-max or just rationalize your vibe-based decisions, let's get started.
We're beginning our journey with the Half-Orcs, the Giga Chads and Muscle Chicks, roided to the gills and alpha as fuck. Not very popular though. Probably because of modern society's oppressive beauty standards, and because they're made partially redundant by the existence of the Shrek Summon mod. The defining feature of Half-Orcs is savage attacks. Deal extra damage whenever you crit with a melee weapon. Not an insane amount of extra damage, but relevant. They also get the Relentless Endurance passive, which lets them get back up if they get downed. Once per long rest, of course. Can be clutch. But savage attacks is what it's all about. Half-Orc means clobbering people with melee weapons while optimizing for crit. Very straightforward. Some synergistic classes are Assassin Rogues because of guaranteed crits on surprise targets, and Paladins because critting with Divine Smite lets you double dip into the passive for whatever reason. Half-Orcs are an A-tier race, optimal for a few select builds and a specific strategy, but completely unexceptional if you don't follow their theme. So all in all, a straightforward A-tier for the smelly boys from Draenor. The Dragonborn. Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't have a dedicated furry race. The game's ecosystem therefore misses out on a lot of input from this extremely productive subculture. The next best thing Baldur's Gate 3 has to offer are these scalies. They look absolutely awesome and probably have the best customization options of all races in an unmodded state, but gameplay-wise, they kinda suck. They only have an underwhelming breath attack on a short rest cooldown and a matching elemental resistance. That's all. Defensive racial passives like these are just too situational. And while the breath attack can be a slight increase to damage in some situations, it gets outscaled as the game progresses. Outscaled. Get it? Okay, anyway. So, partially because I'm indebted to the furry community for reasons I cannot disclose here, and partially because there are simply races that are even worse than Dragonborn, I won't be putting them into D tier. But they're C tier, which means that they have little to offer and are never the optimal choice.
I will find her. I will murder her. And I will smile.
Drow. If you're a no-life neckbeard like me, Drow are basically the perfect race for you. They're hot in an edgy, deviant way that makes them inaccessible to normies. At least I think so. Normies, write in the comments what you think about Drow. Gameplay-wise, Drow cater to the enlightened, min-maxing god gamer. Their strengths are somewhat hidden, only work with certain builds, and require a deeper understanding of the game than many other races. The first major upside of Drow is hand crossbow proficiency. Many characters, especially casters, often find themselves without a good use for their bonus action. Equipping dual hand crossbows solves this issue. If there's nothing more important to do, you can just plink with your offhand for a little damage. Since every well-built character in this game has at least 14 or 16 dexterity, those shots are quite likely to hit. One great example for this are clerics. They get Divine Strike at level 8, so every single turn you can expect something like 10 damage from your cleric's bonus action. Very nice, let's see Paul Allen's race. Drow's second major upside is that they get Darkness at level 5. Darkness is one of the strongest spells in the game. You can use it offensively, throw it on enemies to blind them. That's mostly useful against stationary enemies. The most powerful use case, however, is the rather cheesy act of casting it on your own party to hide everyone inside. As the soft moans of your blinded party members fill your ears, you can rest calmly. As long as you're inside the soft black blob of safety, enemies can't see you and thus can't target you. They can't even properly cast AoE effects at you, and the AI absolutely hates entering the darkness because they're overly afraid of getting blinded themselves. Very goofy things happen with darkness. If all of this sounds a bit nerdy, sweaty, and abusive to you, you're exactly right. That's what Drow are about. They're a min-maxy race for tryhards that want to feel like they're squeezing out the maximum bit of optimization from a character, amongst other things. In addition to that, Drow also have some unique story interactions in Act 1 that, while they are not crucial, allow for a more straightforward and laid-back approach to some encounters. But Drow aren't an S-tier race, unless you take S to stand for Sigma. I'll reserve S-tier for races that are an excellent pick for every character and playstyle. Drow don't fit that description. They can be optimal for some casters that lack hand crossbow proficiency or easy access to darkness, but they fall completely flat on many other classes like Barbarian. They also face some stiff competition from races like Drow Half-Elves who get the same spells and trade weapon proficiencies for powerful armor proficiencies. For this reason, I'll put Drow at the very, very top of A tier. Not universally excellent, but perfect for sweaty gamers who spend way too much time and brain capacity on this game. Gnomes. Gnomes in Baldur's Gate 3 are a complete dumpster fire, so I'll make this quick. Besides advantage on wisdom saving throws, everything the gnome core or their subraces offer is either bad, irrelevant, or outclassed by other races. Rock gnomes go into D tier because advantage on history checks is irrelevant. There are no important history checks in this game. Forest gnomes go into D tier because speak with animals is irrelevant. It's not important and you can gain it from potions. Deep gnomes get advantage on stealth checks. Stealth checks are basically irrelevant unless you play a stealth build, in which case they become crucial. Still, Lightfoot halflings are better for stealth builds. Deep gnomes go into C tier. This is probably a good time to talk about how important race choice actually is in Baldur's Gate 3. From an optimization perspective, the answer is quite simple. It almost doesn't matter. Pretty much everything else about your character is more important than their race. Skill build, item choices, consumables, you name it. In comparison, the difference between the most and least... Wait, do you hear this? Wait, what the fuck is this music? It's almost like... Wait a second, this reminds me of Dust 2. Half-Elves. Half-Elves are evolutional powerhouses, living bucket loads of Darwinian fitness. They are genetically perfected subjugators of mediocre races and masters of efficiency. All half-elves get the civil militia trait, same as humans. This is awesome for lots of characters, partially because of light armor, but even more because of shield proficiency. Shields give +2 AC, which is a big defensive boost throughout the entire game, and many later shields have excellent stats on top of that. And many classes that would really like to equip a shield, sorcerers, wizards, warlocks, and bards, don't have shield proficiency innately, so gaining it from your race is just amazing. As far as racial traits go, civil militia is pretty much as good as it gets. On top of that, all half-elves get 12 meters of dark vision, fey ancestry, plus the most standout perk of the various elf flavors. High half-elves, like high elves, get an additional wizard cantrip. These cantrips always use your intelligence modifier, which kinda sucks because the only class that will put many points into intelligence is the wizard, and wizards already gain loads of cantrips, so gaining one extra is kinda gimmicky. Fortunately, some standout cantrips like Minor Illusion don't care about your intelligence stat. Minor Illusion is awesome especially for setting up fights by making NPCs blob up for AoE nukes.
Let's get this over with.
Friends is another solid pick, letting you pass dialogue checks more easily. Just don't use it on people you don't plan to fight. That said, most parties already have access to these cantrips, and you don't really need them twice. High half-elves are therefore quite niche. Great if you really need that extra spell, but otherwise overshadowed. They go into high B tier for that reason. Wood half-elves gain the flat 1.5 meters movement speed bonus of the wood elves. This is awesome for all characters, but especially for melees. Combine this with the half-elf core and you end up with a race that has no weaknesses and a straightforward 100% reliable strength that will be relevant in almost every single serious encounter. Basically, if you want to turn off your brain and pick a race that is just strong with no extra thought or effort required, pick a wood half-elf. Melee character, extra movement speed. Caster character, shield proficiency, and extra movement speed. If there is one thing about wood half-elves that can be criticized, it's that all of their bonuses are passive. They don't gain any extra buttons like Drow or half-Drow do with darkness. But really, wood half-elves are the pinnacle of evolution. They're a no-brain slam pick for every single character. Countless other races end up in lower tiers simply because they have to measure themselves against the oppressive potency of the wood half-elves. You're not even forced to have them be green. They're just excellent and they're S tier. The last part of the trio are the Drow half-elves. Like Drow, these end up being kinda complex and a bit min-maxy. Basically, in comparison to picking a proper Drow, you sacrifice hand crossbow proficiency and 12 meters of dark vision to instead gain civil militia. For some characters, that's an excellent trade. A bard, for example. They already have hand crossbow proficiency from their class, but no shield proficiency, and also don't normally gain darkness. But as with Drow half-elves aren't a universally excellent pick. In many cases, wood half-elves are just better. They go into A tier for this reason, pretty much on par with Drow, although they shouldn't be seen as interchangeable. Humans. If the thought of being a hot elf, psi-powered space toad, sweat-dripping orc gigachad, or fire-breathing scaly boy makes you feel confused and insecure, or if you think these are all just highly derivative and nonsensical fantasy tropes that pale in comparison to the deep existential significance of being unalterably human, in which case you would be right, Humans are the race for you. Gameplay-wise, humans are an okay but overshadowed race. Like half-elves, they get the civil militia trait. This is in itself strong enough to make them better than a lot of other races, at least on classes that care for the armor proficiencies. In addition to that, and instead of any elven goodies, humans get the human versatility trait. This lets you pick another skill proficiency. This may sound nice on paper, but here's the issue. The only highly impactful skills in Baldur's Gate 3 are Persuasion for your party phase and Sleight of Hand on someone else for lockpicking. Everything else is far less relevant or situational, and many skills like Nature or Animal Handling are almost useless. Since this is all humans get in addition to civil militia, I think you see where this is going. Humans are just outclassed by their half-elf cousins. It's not a bad race in and of itself, but if you're optimizing, you'll never actually pick it. For this reason, humans fall in low B tier. Elves. Together with half-elves and humans, elves are one of the most popular races in Baldur's Gate 3. They are a mainstay of almost all fantasy worlds and Tolkien's greatest gift to fanfiction. We've come so far and so often to the conclusion that we simply must have elves in our party. But is that really so? Do bland old elves really have that much to offer? Elves' standout feature is elven weapon training, which gives them proficiency with longswords, short swords, longbows, and shortbows. More on that in a second. In addition to that, high elves gain a wizard cantrips and wood elves gain 1.5 meters extra movement speed. Like I mentioned when we talked about half-elves, the extra cantrip is going to be a gimmick for most parties, but the woody movement speed is good for every character and excellent for some. So when directly comparing the two sub-races, the wood elf almost always wins out. But the real question is of course how elves stack up against half-elves. First off, for many characters, the two are functionally identical, because many classes don't gain anything from civil militia or elven weapon training. Your barbarian, fighter, paladin, or ranger is functionally the same whether they are a wood elf or wood half-elf. But there are also many cases where the half-elves are clearly better, namely on the classes that profit from shield proficiency given by civil militia, warlocks, sorcerers, wizards, and bards. In comparison, the cases where elven weapon training provides some tangible benefit are very rare and niche. Most characters that want to use these weapons simply gain that proficiency from their class. One example I could think of was a swordsbard rogue multiclass that wants to use a longbow, which is a rather optimized build, so it's not like I'm making up some super obscure example. But as I said, these cases are very rare. To me, this puts wood elves into low A tier and high elves into low B tier. Again, mostly because half-elves exist. Normal elves are either identical to or outclassed by them in like 98% of cases. Dwarves. Dwarves are basically the opposite of elves. People who like elves usually don't resemble them at all. They're ugly, degenerate basement dwellers like myself. With dwarves, it's the opposite. People who like dwarves usually resemble them a lot, which means they're also ugly, degenerate basement dwellers. So it's really just the same person at different stages of self-acceptance. The dwarf core provides 7.5 meters movement speed, 12 meters dark vision, the dwarven resilience trait against poison damage, and the dwarven combat training weapon proficiencies. This is overall not great. Nerfed movement speed always sucks. The dwarven resilience trait is, like most of these defensive passives, too situational to really be worth much, and the weapon proficiencies are so obscure that I don't see any use for them in the current state of the game. In the sub-races, gold dwarves get dwarven toughness, which gives them plus 1 HP per level, which is just not enough. If it was double that, I'd say it's fine, but plus 1 is just sad. C tier because it's still better than gnomes. Shield dwarves get proficiency with light armor and medium armor. This is actually quite good, but spoiler, the shield dwarves are still completely outshined by Githyanki, who get the same plus much more. B tier race. With gold and shield dwarf underwhelming, it's up to Dwergar to save the dwarf's dignity, and they actually deliver. Duergar gain 24 meters dark vision instead of 12, which is minor but nice. They also gain the Duergar resilience trait, which gives advantage on saving throws against paralyzed. I usually hate on defensive passives, but this one is actually decent. Paralyze is one of the scariest status effects in the game and pops up in a few difficult fights, making this trait situationally powerful. This by itself wouldn't be enough to make Duergar a good race, but they also gain racial spells at levels 3 and 5. The character creation screen doesn't tell you this, but I guess it goes with their vibe of being sneaky and everything. The first one of these spells is Enlarge, and other than those pills your boyfriend bought from that website last year, it actually works. I won't bore you with the complete specifics of how it functions, but it basically increases attack damage a tiny bit, and unlike the sorcerer or wizard version of the spell, it doesn't require concentration. So pre-buffing yourself with this spell before combat can be quite nice. The second spell is Invisibility, and this one is awesome. Normal invisibility lasts only 10 turns, but this one is permanent and has no cooldown. This makes it a great tool for scouting. Things like picking locks or picking up items breaks Duergar invisibility, but a few select things don't, like drinking potions, poisoning your weapons, and casting minor illusion. All of this combined makes Duergar invisibility the best tool for setting up fights in the entire game, and even beyond that, it's a spell that opens up a lot of game-breaking possibilities.
Never a dull moment. Never wanted the easy path.
If you abuse all of their strengths, and especially invisibility, Duergar may be the most OP race in the game. But you can't exactly be lazy or no-brain it, and it does favor a playstyle that many players will find somewhat cheesy and tedious. Because of this, I won't be putting Duergar into S tier. That's reserved for races that are excellent in a straightforward way for any class and playstyle. I'll put them into A tier, directly behind Drow, because I hate dwarves and love elves. Githyanki. Githyanki are heavily disliked by the player base. There's no need to sugarcoat it, it's because they're ugly. Now, it's no secret that Githyanki are incredibly strong mechanically, so it seems to be one of those cases where min-maxing equates to celibacy.
Harassed! Another one! Keep back, flatface! I know how to handle myself.
But it shouldn't come as a surprise that the modding community has long found solutions to this dilemma. All you need to do is to erase all concerns about lore-accurate portrayal, install a few mods, and your space toads are in a perfectly workable state. With bat noses and scarred bodies out of the way, you're free to explore the many perks of genetically manipulated alien physiology. What makes Githyanki great is their racial spells and armor proficiencies. The first racial spell you get is Astral Knowledge. This gives you proficiency in all skills of a chosen ability. For example, if you pick Charisma, you gain proficiency in Deception, Intimidation, Performance, and Persuasion. So it's mostly an out-of-combat thing. You can only use this once per long rest, but especially if you already know the game pretty well, and thus also know when certain important skill checks are coming up, this is amazing. If you think I was wrong when I said human versatility is bad, think again. Instead of choosing one skill upon character creation, Githyanki get to choose several skills pretty much on demand. Githyanki also gain Mage Hand at level 1, Enhanced Leap at 3, and Misty Step at level 5, all on a long rest CD. Mage Hand is always useful, and Enhanced Leap can also be good in the many fights where movement plays a major role. The big deal, however, is Misty Step, which is simply the best mobility spell in the entire game. Getting it once per long rest from your race is great for any character, and especially on those that don't naturally have access to it. On top of these excellent spells, Githyanki also gain unique, excellent racial proficiencies. The weapon proficiencies, as per usual, are mostly irrelevant, but gaining proficiency with light and medium armor is excellent for many characters. So all in all, Githyanki gain excellent racial spells and excellent proficiencies on top of a workable core that doesn't have any major downsides. In practice, this makes them a rock-solid pick for any character, and an optimal one for many. Misty Step is universally amazing, especially for melees, while casters often love gaining medium armor proficiency without nerfing their power curve by multiclassing into, say, Cleric. Comparing them to Wood Half-Elves, the one major downside that sticks out about Githyanki is their lack of shield proficiency. For a lot of caster characters, shields are more desirable than medium armor, since they'd rather wear robes anyway for large parts of the game. They both excel at mobility, but from level 5 onward, I think it's safe to say that Misty Step outweighs the flat extra movement speed of Wood Elves. Overall, Githyanki have a higher ceiling with how much they can provide to a character, but Wood Half-Elves are lower maintenance and more reliable when it comes to character building and gameplay. As a final verdict, Githyanki without a doubt belong into S tier. Alongside Wood Half-Elves, they set a benchmark that countless other races fail to reach, and if they do, it's only in the context of rather specific builds and playstyles. Make a party of only Githyanki, or only half Wood Elves, or a mix of the two, and you can be sure to have one of the most powerful race setups possible. Okay gamers, time to go small again. Halflings. These friendly little ankle biters are defined by one thing: halfling luck. But before we dive into that, let's get their other racial traits out of the way. That'll make things easier as we go on. Without halfling luck taken into account, halflings suck rather hard. 7.5 meters movement speed, no dark vision. They get brave, which gives advantage on saving throws against frightened. It's not useless because frightened comes up in a number of very difficult fights, but overall it's still one of those minor defensive passives and nothing too big. The two halfling subraces don't offer too much either. Strongheart halflings get poison resistance, which is mostly irrelevant. Lightfoot halflings gain advantage on stealth checks, which for stealth builds is amazing, although there are other ways to gain this trait a bit later on in the game. Otherwise, it's irrelevant. So far, halflings are a C tier race, maybe low B tier, very similar to gnomes. Let's keep this in mind as we finally look at the trait that has to save them: halfling luck. So what does it do? Halfling luck lets you reroll any natural 1 on attack rolls, saving throws, and ability checks. This applies to your rolls only, so it doesn't help with enemy saving throws. For example, it won't help you land hold person, because that's determined by their saving throw, but it will help you hit firebolt, because that's your attack roll. I'll spare you going into all of the math on halfling luck in detail. The most important thing is that its impact is stronger the higher the base probability of success already is. For example, if you normally have a 95% chance of success, halfling luck turns this into 99.75%, adding 4.75%. If you only have a 5% chance of success, halfling luck turns it into 5.25%, so it does almost nothing. Most rolls fall into neither of those two categories, but are more in the range of 40 to 80% base probability. On those, halfling luck grants somewhere between 2% and 4% bonus. How good is that? Well, in comparison to all other racial passives, it's quite clearly the best. But we are not ranking racial passives, we are ranking races. So we have to remember that this trait exists on an otherwise trash race. Choosing halfling luck means giving up the 3 meters movement speed and shield proficiency of a Wood Half-Elf, or all the racial spells of a Githyanki or a Drow, and so on. I think it boils down to this. On characters who make a lot of attack rolls and ability checks, halfling can be optimal. Ideally, some risk-dripping party phase with extra attacks, like a Swords Bard, Pact of the Blade Warlock, a Stealth build, or maybe a Paladin. For everyone else, the slight statistical edge from halfling luck struggles to compete with more straightforward benefits like movement speed, proficiencies, and racial spells. All in all, this makes halfling an A-tier race, optimal for specific builds and if you like math, I guess. Specifically, I'll put Lightfoot Halfling into the middle of A tier because of its potential value for stealth builds, and Strongheart into low A tier because of its forgettable passive. Alright, we're at the end. Only one race left. Tieflings. Kinda devious looking, kinda interesting, aren't they? Yes. Actually, the story makes them seem like the most normie race of them all, like this dude, who basically acts like a dad at a parent-teacher conference. Their base traits are very average too. 9 meters movement speed, 12 meters dark vision, and another one of those forgettable defensive passives. Nothing out of the ordinary here. But things get a little quirky with the sub-races, who all have their own set of racial spells. Let's start out with Asmodeus Tieflings. They get Produce Flame at level 1, Hellish Rebuke at level 3, and Darkness at 5. Produce Flame is a forgettable C-tier cantrip. Hellish Rebuke is some free damage on a reaction once per long rest, not useless but minor. But Darkness at 5 is big. I talked about Darkness a lot when we talked about Drow. Basically, it's one of the strongest spells in the game, and an excellent spell to gain from your race. The problem of the Asmodeus Tiefling is competition. Drow and Drow Half-Elves also get Darkness, but come with better perks like weapon or armor proficiencies. Asmodeus Tieflings are solid, but thoroughly outclassed. B tier. Mephistopheles Tieflings get Mage Hand at level 1, Burning Hands at level 3, and Flame Blade at level 5. Mage Hand is good, but you don't need it from your race, and if you do, you can just pick Githyanki. The other two spells are, sadly, complete gimmicks. Flameblade in itself isn't a bad spell, but as a racial ability it's on a long rest CD and can't be upcast. I really don't see any use for it. C tier, although dangerously close to D tier. Alright, and ultimately the Zariel Tieflings, who get Thaumaturgy, Searing Smite, and Branding Smite. Thaumaturgy is an excellent and otherwise difficult to obtain cantrip for a party phase. On any other character it's negligible. The two smites are, well, very niche. Basically, on a melee character that has no reliable way to deal damage from their bonus action, the smites add some damage, on demand once per long rest. It's not easy to find such a character. Maybe a melee ranger or some sort of fighter, not a barbarian because you can't use smites while raging. All in all, Zariel Tiefling's advantages are extremely niche, but they exist and they're unique. I'll put them into low A tier so we have at least one of these sexy devils in the upper areas of the list. Alright, and that's the completed list. Do you agree, disagree, have something to add, something I forgot? Write a comment. If you liked the video, leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. This channel is obviously just starting out, so any support would be greatly appreciated. I'll probably make more Baldur's Gate 3 content in the future, so I hope to see you there. Until then, have a good time.